What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, September 14th, 2016, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Kaahumanu Friday, and another crazy, wacky weekend of whatever is going to be happening during this very chaotic time in our history here. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today, and to begin with, I have been assured that our toll-free lines will be back here the first part of next week. But in the meantime, if you want to call into the show, the numbers once again are 512-716-1603, 512-716-1883, and 512-716-1897. And if you get a recording, it means the line is busy. You can try a different number, or you can wait a few minutes and call in again. Now, just before we went to air, we started seeing this story pop up on the corporate media. Hillary Clinton will resume her campaign tomorrow, Thursday. And unless they're planning to use the body double, which would be reckless, this tells us that whatever it was that happened on Sunday wasn't pneumonia. You don't get over pneumonia that quickly. And again, with that squeeze test going on, it was something neurological. And perhaps not too surprising at this point, over at WorldNet Daily, they're running a story where apparently some insiders who know Hillary are anonymously confirming that she is at stage 3 Parkinson's disease, which is the stage at which the damage really begins to accelerate. And so it's another confirmation, along with all these other doctors who are saying, yeah, this is Parkinson's. This isn't pneumonia. This isn't dehydration. She's got Parkinson's. And with Parkinson's comes dementia, and that is not something that we would like to have in the person holding those keys to the nuclear weapons. Just do a little volume check here. Now then, story coming out of Zero Hedge, and it's Dr. Ted Knoll. He's an anesthesiologist, 36 years of experience, and he has been out there with these videos and interviews saying that the symptomology of Hillary Clinton is consistent with Parkinson's disease. And it's a terrible, terrible illness. Your brain is basically melting away on you. And it's certainly not something I would wish on anybody. But if Hillary has it, then she is medically unfit to be the President of the United States of America. Now, a lot of attention has been focused on Chelsea's condo and the fact that the building that the condo is in used to be a hospital. As it turns out, there is still a medical facility inside that building. And apparently it is called MetroCare Home Services. It's on the same floor as Chelsea Clinton's condo. And it is a home medical care provider. And maybe that's why they took Hillary there instead of the emergency room, which would be the normal Secret Service protocol, because they didn't want any of the doctors carrying any stories, because they've had a real problem with leaks. Now, a lot of people are pointing a finger of ridicule at the Washington Post over that story they ran yesterday. After months and months of declaring that anybody who had any questions about Hillary Clinton's health was just a wacko conspiracy theorist, they came out with one of the wackiest conspiracy theories so far this year, that Vladimir Putin and or Donald Trump poisoned Hillary. See, her health was fine. It's that dastardly Putin and that dastardly Trump. They've poisoned Hillary Clinton, which basically tells us that the establishment they're desperate on the cusp of madness. Because the Washington Post, that is the establishment. Same thing with the New York Times. And they understand that if all of these lies they've been telling to support Hillary Clinton become exposed, they're basically out of business at this point. Now, something else very strange has been happening up in Chappaqua, where Hillary Clinton's residence, obviously, it's very well protected. It's under Secret Service protection. But apparently, all of a sudden, they're erecting more barriers, concrete barriers, outside the property and further away. And basically, if you go past the concrete structures or if you walk on the grass, the police will shoo you away. And that seems a bit odd. And the only thing I can think of is, following that embarrassing video from Sunday, is that Hillary absolutely doesn't want to take a chance that somebody with a camera and a telephoto lens is going to get a picture of something that Hillary does not want to have go out. Now, this being Wednesday, we're starting to get the post-9/11 poll numbers. Trump is pulling well into the lead. He's 5 points ahead in Ohio. Latest Los Angeles Times poll, Donald Trump is ahead by 5 there. In fact, he's now got a 5% lead nationally. Now, 5% is not enough to overcome the vote rigors, but the trend is my friend, as they say. We're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining our network. And we're talking, obviously, about politics and the campaign. Hillary's supposedly going to be on the campaign trail tomorrow, which tells us whatever it was that happened on Sunday, it wasn't pneumonia. And it may be that she had a seizure related to her stage 3 Parkinson's. Now, Obama is out there campaigning for Hillary and saying, you've got to give us more money. Donald Trump might actually win, and he might, because Hillary and her team, in fact, the Democratic Party as a whole, are self-destructing. Now, Hillary's comment about deplorable people has now backfired, because Trump supporters are going around saying, I'm deplorable and I'm proud of it. I'm a Trump deplorable. Deal with it. And I'd rather be a deplorable for Donald Trump than a parasitic sycophant hanger-oner for Hillary Clinton. Now, the governor of Kentucky is out there, Governor Bevin, saying that if Hillary Clinton, by some skullduggery, becomes president, he sees it as entirely possible that this could lead to bloodshed in the streets. I wouldn't like to see that. But at this point, given her health issues and all the other corruption that is coming on out, if Hillary were to be declared the winner, nobody's going to believe it. They're not going to believe it. One tiny, tiny, tiny bit. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Clinton, Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I got a couple things. One, I just like to remind everybody, when Ronald Reagan got shot, the first reporters, they weren't sure he was shot. And they wanted to go back to the White House, at least that's one of the reports, and the Secret Service overruled the whole thing, went to standard operating procedure, went to the hospital, and if they went back to the White House, he probably would have died.
Yeah, it was a real close call there, and after he recovered is when people really began to notice that he was in a period of deterioration.
Right, and so given all the different stories about Hillary, how could they know that it would be okay for her to go to Chelsea's apartment and play with the grandkids?
Well, obviously, Hillary was giving the orders, and again, as we pointed out, there actually is a medical facility, a home care medical facility on the same floor as Chelsea's condo in that building. And I think it's probably a safe bet that that's actually where Hillary Clinton went, and this story about playing with the grandchildren is complete and utter nonsense, because if you buy the official story that she had pneumonia, playing with those kids is very dangerous. She's going to infect them.
Yeah. And you couldn't do it with pneumonia anyways.
No, you couldn't. I mean, I've had pneumonia, and, whatever Hillary had, it wasn't pneumonia. There's no question in my mind.
And I saw a side-by-side today. One's hashtag Hillary, and the other one, on the one on the right, I guess it's her alt-right conspiracy, the alt-Hillary, and they're not even close. Hillary's got a much bigger butt than this girl that walked out of that.
Well, from a distance, to people who aren't looking for a deception, she can apparently pass for Hillary, and apparently she's been playing Hillary since 2009. This has become her full-time gig. But now that we know that it's out there, she is, in fact, very, very easy to spot.
Yeah. It's like, how could you miss this one? It's like, how could you miss her not diving into the pavement like that? I mean, but I just want to remind everybody that no, when a client for the Secret Service has any medical emergency, they're no, we're going to trauma.
Yeah.
This is utter BS.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Okay.
Have a good day.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to OB in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I just wanted to tell you that I've had pneumonia 3 times in the last 6 years, and every time I was hospitalized for at least a week.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I was in the hospital for 10 days, and I hated every minute of it. I think they would have kept me in the hospital longer than that, but they just got sick and tired of me and said, get out of here.
Yeah. I was also diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and I don't know, to me, I'm no doctor, but she didn't look like she had pneumonia or Alzheimer's. I'm not aware that anybody is suggesting she's got Alzheimer's. The consensus opinion is she's suffering from stage 3 Parkinson's. Well, yeah, and to me, that would make her unqualified to be president. No question. Because she's at the stage in Parkinson's where she's going to be suffering dementia. She's got memory problems. We've already seen that. We're hearing that, she's having to just work at memorization of everything she's going to say. She can't think extemporaneously. Remember that video where there was a disruption at her rally and this doctor leaps up beside her and says, you're okay, keep talking. And that's obviously coaching somebody who can't handle an unexpected situation, which, if you're president, most of what you're dealing with during the day is going to be pretty much unexpected. Yes, sir. And, well, with me, I have trouble remembering people's names, and I can watch a TV program at night, and the next morning I can't remember what I watched. Well, I've got exactly the opposite problem. Once I've seen a TV show or a movie, I remember it, and I can never watch it again. So it's a vast wasteland out there. Anyway, OB, anything else? No, sir, that's all I wanted to say. All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch to Steve in California. Aloha, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Parkinson's is a possibility, but also you ought to look at the WebMD.com page for lupus and look at some of the symptomology she's showing with the rash and a lot of other things. She could possibly have lupus. I mean, it's possible, but Parkinson's is definitely a possibility also. But look over the signs and symptoms of lupus on the WebMD.com page and see what you see there that might fit her scenario. She's a sick lady, no doubt about it. Oh yeah, there's no question. She's very, very ill. It isn't a pneumonia. That's a joke. I've had pneumonia, and no, you don't bounce back that fast. No, you don't. So you absolutely do not do that. I mean, I was in the hospital for 10 days, and then for about a week after I finally got home, I was doing this radio show, with an oxygen tube on my nose here. I mean, that's how long it took me to get over this situation. So, yeah, the idea that she had pneumonia and then all of a sudden 2 hours later somebody who looks just like Hillary is bouncing around the streets and I'm fine and it's a beautiful day. I mean, it's such a complete joke. Yeah, check out that lupus connection. Maybe it might be something to look at. All right, I'll take a look at it. But right now we've got all these other doctors. And again, going back to that WorldNet Daily article, some of the Clinton insiders are saying what she has is stage 3 Parkinson's. Yeah. It also mentions on the lupus that they also are prominent to have DVTs, the deep vein thrombosis, in which we know she has that. So yeah, interesting. All right, I'll take a look at it, but at this point, I'm betting my nickel on the stage 3 Parkinson's. All right, thanks, Michael. All right, thanks an awful lot. Okay, well, along with Hillary's health issues, there are a couple of other things going on here, and one has to do with the fact that Congress is starting their own investigation of Hillary Clinton's email server. They are very dissatisfied with the FBI and the Department of Justice, as are the rest of us, and they're holding their own investigation, and already we're seeing signs of a massive cover-up. Hillary's IT guy, Brian Pagliani, has immunity.
and still refused to show up when he was subpoenaed by the Congress. And obviously, if he's got immunity, he's not going to go to jail for anything he's done. His concern probably is that he's going to wind up, with 2 bullets in the back of his head and declared a suicide. Now, Representative John Mica took the FBI to task because, as you know, the FBI is trying to drag their feet about honoring the congressional subpoena for every piece of documentation on their investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. And the FBI is trying to take a position about, well, we'll give you this stuff, and this is what you need to look at, and you don't really need the other stuff. And John Mica said, yeah, we do. The subpoena says everything. That means everything. You don't get to decide for the Congress what's important and what's not. Clearly, the FBI knows there is something they have to hide. And again, I'm going to go on asking this question. Was Hillary Clinton repeating the 1996 Chinagate scandal? Was she selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests using her weak email server to deliver, and that Clinton Foundation to collect and launder the payments? It's a reasonable question to ask. Given the way the email server and the foundation are set up, and given the Clintons' past history, it's a perfectly reasonable question, and nobody wants to touch it in the corporate media or the government. Now, as you know, there's been another release of the DNC emails hacked by Guccifer 2.0, and the interim Democratic National Committee chair, Donna Brazile, is out there just in a panic, saying, don't look at the new hacked information. It has malware inside. It'll cause your hair to fall on out. You'll have waxy yellow buildup on your kitchen floors if you dare look at those emails. I mean, just anything that they can say to try and discourage people from looking at it, and of course, ending up with, it's all lies by Russia anyway. These documents were stolen by Russia. No, they weren't. But they're just in a panic right now. They're trying to come up with anything that is going to get them ahead of this crisis, and it is. This latest release of DNC emails is even more damaging than the ones that came on out during the convention and drove Debbie Wasserman Schultz from her position. One of the most damaging email discussions is an email chain between Democratic Senator and donor Jeffrey Leeds traded emails with Colin Powell back in 2015, saying Hillary Clinton could barely climb up the podium steps. She doesn't look good. So we're getting confirmation that, yes, Hillary is dealing with a progressive illness going back for years. Another story that's coming out of Economic Policy Journal, some of the DNC leaks coming out of WikiLeaks demonstrate that the Democratic Party may have been engaged in insider trading, where they were making investments in what would be considered high-risk stocks, but always seem to come out on the winning side. Oh, and by the way, you know, the anti-gun agenda of the Democratic National Committee, turns out the Democratic National Committee invested its money in Smith & Wesson because they knew that every time Obama comes on out talking about banning guns, people buy guns. They were making money off of Obama's gun control policies. Yet another email came on out talking about how stage-managed Hillary's rallies are, complaining about when their allies don't deliver the bodies in time for the cameras. Her rallies are fakes. Those are not real, ordinary Americans supporting Hillary Clinton. They're just rounded up like cattle and delivered for the benefit of the cameras. And she still can't get a crowd that comes anywhere near to that for Donald Trump. It's all a fake. It's all a hoax. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Yet another email in this latest document dump is from Huma Abedin and confirms that Hillary Clinton has a deadly blood clot and has had it for 3 years. It's called a cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, and it's obviously in a position where they can't get at it, they can't dissolve it, and as it moves around, it can block the flow of blood to portions of the brain, causing headaches, abnormal vision, partial paralysis. It just goes on. And it gets better than that. Apparently, the latest dump of emails has revealed a massive pay-for-play scandal at the highest levels of the U.S. government. This one not only gets Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, this one goes up to Barack Obama himself. And there's literally a price list of what it costs to get an ambassadorship or other top governmental post. And here's the scary part. Remember what I was saying before about we have a government of people who may be very good criminals and very good drug smugglers and money launderers, but they're not good administrators. And now we're seeing the proof that we have a government that's being run by people whose only qualification for office is money. So let me give you some examples. Matthew Barzan raised $3,500,000, became ambassador to Great Britain and then to Sweden. Julius Ganachowski raised $3.4 million, became the chairman of the FCC. Frank Sanchez raised $3.4 million, became the Undersecretary of Commerce. Charles Rivkin raised $2.5 million, became ambassador to France and then the Assistant Secretary of State. Kirk Wager raised $2.3 million, became ambassador to Singapore. Alan Solomont raised $2.3 million, became ambassador to Spain. John Roos raised $2 million, became ambassador to Japan. Nicole Avant raised $2 million, became ambassador to the Bahamas. Eileen Chamberlain Donahoe raised $2 million, became ambassador to the United Nations. And it goes on and on and on. And it's not just ambassadorships, it's other government positions. And it's a giveaway. It's a complete giveaway. They sold the government to the highest bidder. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Jim in Chicago. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, yesterday I was hearing the hearings regarding Hillary's email, and I came to the conclusion, 3 of those guys refused to testify. They all took the Fifth Amendment. Then I realized to myself, they're not protecting Hillary. They're protecting Barack Obama, just like with Nixon, those guys that did not take who did not testify, they were protecting Nixon. And you basically stated it by reading your last comment regarding Barack Obama and getting money for certain positions.
Well, I'm certain that these people who are connected with Hillary's email server are refusing to testify out of a sense of self-preservation.
Well, that's part of it.
There's even a cartoon that's been going around the net for a while where Hillary's talking to Brian Pagliano and saying, you did the right thing taking the Fifth Amendment. I only have 2 words for you, Vince Foster.
Well, tell me this, though. How come the Congress isn't going after the White House?
They may yet. Yet. There's a huge can of worms there. If I'm right about that email server, there's a huge can of worms there they're going to have to deal with. And
is this why Harry Reid became very combative when he heard about what the FBI had to tell him?
Probably. Because what we're hearing from an inside source at the FBI is that the Clinton Foundation is actually a giant slush fund and a money laundry, and all the top people in Washington, D.C. are involved with it. And if that all comes on out, we're talking about scraping out Washington, D.C. and starting over with a clean slate.
Now, does that include Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett?
We're not sure. We don't have the names yet, but we are hearing from this FBI insider saying that all the top level of the government are tainted by this. They're all part of the corruption. Jim?
Well, don't you think Barack Obama knew about Hillary's email?
I'm sure he did. There's no question he did. He used her private server email address on occasions. Okay?
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to let you go.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the latest dump of DNC emails. Pardon me. And we were talking about the very obvious pay-for-play where our ambassadorships and top government positions were given to people who were not necessarily the best qualified to do the job, but were simply the source of huge amounts of money coming into the Democratic campaigns. And this is tainting not just Hillary Clinton, but President Obama himself. And another one of the emails from this dump shows Democratic Party officials specifically discussing how they were going to arrange these donations in order to avoid red flags that they were pay for play. All right, let's take a phone call here. Kathleen in Paris. Aloha, Kathleen. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
It's about this topic that you're talking about. You know that Judge Jeanine Pirro?
Yes.
She said one time when Hillary was trying to defend herself, Hillary said, Judge Pirro called it a shot across the bow. Hillary kept repeating, everybody knew I was doing it. Everybody knew. And she was defending, Colin Powell told me it was okay, and everybody knew. So what she's saying is Obama knew.
Well, we know that Obama used Hillary's Clinton email address on a couple of occasions. So, yeah, he did know. He did know what was going on. There's no question about that.
So there was no doubt that she was going to walk free, or she's taking Obama down with her.
Well, see, that's the secret of the Clintons' power throughout the years. They have enough inside information on the government, especially the CIA drug running and the selling of drugs to our children, where they can destroy careers. They're untouchable because of everything that they know. But at some point, we're going to have to rip the scab off of that and let it all out for the American people to see what's really been going on.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Now, Judicial Watch has just released 72 pages of Department of Justice documents revealing email conversations between officials and the staff of Senator Whitehouse regarding ways to prosecute the Tea Party groups, to wage lawfare against them to try and shut them down. And maybe because of all this nefarious behavior, because the Internal Revenue Service is supposed to be nonpartisan. They're not supposed to be a weapon against the enemies of the administration. That was actually originally going to be one of the articles of impeachment against Richard Nixon. So Republicans have now submitted a resolution to impeach the IRS commissioner. It's probably not going to pass because they don't want to be audited every year for the rest of their lives. But they're starting to understand the American people are looking at all this stuff that's going on. And something's going to have to get done about it, one way or the other. And I'm deeply concerned about it being the other. Now, there's another story that's come on out. This is from Russia Insider, that Hillary Clinton kept a hit list of political enemies, which is hardly surprising. Nixon had an enemies list as well, and basically talks about all the journalists who have been fired for criticizing Hillary. And this last week, when the story about her health began to really grow, before the incident at 9/11, we saw iconic people in the corporate media losing their jobs just for suggesting that maybe there's a legitimate question about Hillary's health. And by the way, Dr. Drew and all the rest of those people, they now have grounds for wrongful termination lawsuits against their former employers, and I hope they sue. I hope they sue these corporate media outlets to extinction for the way they were treated. Here we actually had some people within the corporate media trying to do their job properly, and they were punished for it. Another DNC email refers to Democratic donors as clowns. That's what they really think of you out there. You're just a bunch of clowns. Is there to be used. Now, as you're probably already aware, the Democrats are on the warpath against any kind of voter ID law. They're sending their lawyers out across the country trying to figure out ways they can overturn or erase laws that require people to show an ID to vote. And their excuse is it's discriminatory, it's racist, and that, of course, is completely absurd. Because you have to show an ID to buy a bottle of wine. Nobody says that's racist or discriminates against minorities. You have to show a license to drive a car if you're pulled over by the police. Nobody says that's racist or discriminatory against minorities. But what they want is voter ID laws erased so that anybody can vote using anybody else's voter registration. These motor voter laws have created vast numbers of voter registrations which are never used. And that is fodder for massive election fraud. And so the Democrats are against voter ID. But as it turns out, the Democrats have an internal voter ID system to track Democratic voters. So getting ID from voters is good for the Democratic Party, just bad for the actual election. A little bit of hypocrisy there. Another email's come on out showing that Huma Abedin was mocking Benghazi on the same day that Hillary Rodham Clinton attended the coffin ceremony for the 4 Americans she let die. And that, I think, fits the definition of deplorable a lot more closely than being a Trump supporter. So how is the corporate media dealing with all of this? Well, they're trying to find a way out of this self-created mess. And CNN is out there. Basically, they're going through the emails, and the only ones they're publishing are ones where this Democrat says Donald Trump is a bad guy, or that Democrat says Donald Trump is racist. That's all they're putting out there. They're not putting out all the stuff about the pay for play, the confirmation that Hillary has had this illness she's dealing with back in 2015. They're just cherry-picking anything that can be used as a weapon against Donald Trump, which is why most wags say that CNN stands for the Clinton News Network. Now, another revelation that's come on out from these emails is the Democratic National Committee has an automated system that allows them to rewrite state voter rolls. Do you remember back during the primary where people were showing up to vote and they were told their registrations had been changed mysteriously? All the Bernie Sanders voters were told they couldn't vote for Bernie Sanders because they'd been re-registered as Republican, or they'd been re-registered as Libertarian. And now we find out the DNC had a system that literally let them go into all the state voter rolls and execute mass changes. So right now, the Democratic National Committee, about all they can really say about this is all Trump and Russia. They're the problem. We're not doing anything that politicians haven't been doing all along. But gosh darn that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, this is all their fault, and you shouldn't be reading anything that the Russians had anything to do with. And of course, the Russians didn't have anything to do with this at all. It's thought that much of the DNC was a leak, probably by Seth Rich, who paid the ultimate price for it. Now, Oliver Stone, who has his new film about Edward Snowden out, is saying that his inside sources are saying that the DNC hack was an inside job. And remember, Julian Assange made a point of saying none of this had anything to do with Russia, and he implied it was Seth Rich. He stopped short of confirming it because Assange is trying to protect his sources, but he got awfully close to saying that it was Seth Rich. Now, Michael Savage is somebody that I tend not to agree with very often about anything, but in this case, he's absolutely right. Michael Savage is out there saying the Democrats are going to try and rig this election. This is reported over in WorldNet Daily. And Michael Savage is out there saying that this country could be one bad election away from losing everything. And he's absolutely right about that. When he's right, he's right. So let's turn over to the war zones, emphasis on the plural. Things are getting interesting over there. So far, the Turkish General Staff has announced over 500 square miles in Syria have been freed from Daesh, ISIS, ISIL, whatever they're calling themselves this week. Russia has asked for a 48-hour extension of the Syrian ceasefire, mostly because the U.S.-backed moderates are refusing to honor it, and the Russian soldiers guarding the humanitarian transit route for the supplies have come under fire. Now, as we pointed out yesterday, statements made by John Kerry last week regarding how the U.S. was going to work together with Russia and Syria and was all about getting the terrorists have already been discredited. The State Department came on out and said, no, we're not working with Assad. John Kerry was wrong about that, and Russia is pointing out that the U.S. is still refusing to carry out bombing raids against their pet terrorist groups. So with a track record of honesty like that, it's no surprise that Russia is demanding that the upcoming U.S.-Russia pact on Syria should be published for the world to see in order to avoid what they're politely terming as misinterpretations. In other words, there'll be a pact, and the U.S. will say, oh, well, you misunderstood what we said. We're really going to be doing this. And so Russia is saying, we're going to make it public. A little bit of sunlight to make sure that things are not misunderstood. Now, as you know, the U.S. is trying to provoke Iran. They're sending their Navy surveillance planes right along the border with the transponders turned off. That's a very threatening, provocative thing to do. Iran is warning the U.S. Navy that if they don't quit that stuff, they're going to shoot the planes down. And, of course, the U.S. government and the core media are saying, oh, see, Iran is the troublemaker. Iran's the troublemaker. No, they're not. I mean, if Iran was tooling around the Gulf of Mexico or Baja California, you could make the case that Iran is being threatening. But you need to remember that Iran has not initiated a war of conquest in over 200 years. Certainly a record the U.S. cannot come close to matching. And Iran has issued a statement to the U.S. Navy, go play around the Bay of Pigs in the Gulf of Mexico, because that's your side of the planet, the Persian Gulf is ours. And they're absolutely right. The Persian Gulf borders Iran. And you've got all these U.S. ships and planes just buzzing around there, rattling their weapons. It's obvious who the provocateur is here. Now, down in Libya, I love this headline. This is coming out of Russia Today. And it's basically quoting statements from the U.S. government, how the rogue Libyan government vows to protect national wealth as West demands withdrawal from seized oil ports. And the U.S. and several of its allies have condemned the takeover of 4 oil terminals in Libya by the country's rival administration, calling for an immediate withdrawal. Something you need to understand. When they say rival administration and rogue, what they're talking about is the government that the people of Libya want, instead of their imposed U.S. puppets. That's what this is really all about. All of these countries are sick and tired of being overthrown and having puppet rulers imposed on them by the United States. Because now they all understand that's what's been going on to their countries. They're not genuine revolutions. They're manufactured from outside. Since 9/11, last 15 years, the U.S. government has spent close to $5 trillion, with a T, on wars. And that's not including the some $6 trillion that has supposedly gone missing over the years from the Pentagon. So that's $11 trillion to the so-called Defense Department. It's really an offense department, but they call it the Defense Department. Now, just for a moment, imagine what $11 trillion could do for the United States. It could repair all of our crumbling infrastructure. It could rebuild the factories, bring jobs back to the United States. We could incentivize manufacturers to bring their manufacturing back to this country. By the way, apparently Ford is moving the last of their small car production down to Mexico. $5 trillion plus the 6 that went missing. $11 trillion. That's a lot of money. Of course, you know the feeling over there in Washington, D.C. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. Soon you're talking some real money. Now, let's talk about the economy. Story over in Zero Hedge. Company Interactive Brokers has basically started a practice they're calling mandatory cap price, saying that the brokerage will now choose to set a cap or a floor or simply cancel any order that would otherwise be marketable due to a price that is not consistent with a fair and orderly market. And I'm going to take a guess here that somebody tried to get into Interactive Brokers and do the cyber equivalent of a pump and dump on them, and this is their response to that. Okay. Coming up on a commercial break, I'm going to take phone calls after the coming commercial. Apparently, Rothschild Gulf Investment Bank is now the subject of a scam alert by ADGM. And apparently, the Rothschild Gulf Investment Bank has not been granted a financial services permission as an authorized person. In other words, they're doing business without the appropriate paperwork, and they're going further to say such misrepresentations may be linked to other illegal activities. Meaning now one of the Rothschild banks may be caught laundering money for the drug criminals. We got to take a break for commercials. We got some calls waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go to the phones here. Alex in San Antonio. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Alex, are you there?
Mike. Yes. Hi. Aloha, Mike. I was calling because I wanted to see your opinion about this possible scenario regarding Hillary Clinton and her possible replacement being Michelle Obama and her possible VP being Bernie Sanders. What do you think?
I think it's nonsensical to even suggest that Michelle Obama would be put in as a candidate. Nobody would vote for her. She's got zero experience other than being the wife of a previous president. And everybody remembers that disastrous Michelle Obama lunch program in the schools. If Hillary is forced to step down, it should go to Bernie Sanders because he had the second highest number of votes. But I think what they'll do is shove Bernie Sanders aside and put Joe Biden in there, possibly with Sanders as the VP, because Biden is a very good debater, and these upcoming debates are where this election is going to be won or lost. And we're hearing that all the top Democrats are in a total panic, that Hillary is not going to be able to handle the debates. They're trying to change it to more of a forum rather than let Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton talk to each other. And by the way, one of the leaked DNC emails confirms Hillary Clinton does use a radio earpiece because she can't think for herself. She's got a room full of people who feed her sound bites. So, you know, Donald Trump is not going to be debating Hillary Clinton. He's going to be debating 6 or 7 policy experts.
Okay, so you discarded the idea of Michelle Obama being someone that they might put up there.
I think it would be one of the most foolish and reckless things they could possibly do.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, and we're going to switch to Ken in Massachusetts. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, it's Ken. Hooray for Mike. Hey, Mike, I was calling up, you know that comedian politician they called Joe Biden?
Yes.
He's always getting away with saying, like he said it about Trump, and I know he said it before, he'd say, that person's full of blarney. Mm-hmm. And then the news media comes out and they make like a big deal out of, oh, he's so funny, he said the word blarney, and they tell you what blarney means. So I decided to look up the word blarney for myself, and I found out that the origin of the word blarney is Hillary.
That was...
I'm kidding, of course.
Okay, all right.
Anytime somebody says somebody's full of blarney, they're actually saying they're full of Hillary. And then I went further on to investigate.
Well, them's fighting
Hillary,
words.
Yeah. And they said that the word Hillary is also the origin of the word felony. Can you believe that one?
Yeah, I'm more inclined to buy that one than insult the Irish.
Yeah, me too. So, like, from now on, if you see somebody and they're trying to, somebody that's been convicted of 5 felonies, you can say they've been convicted of 5 Hillarys.
Well, it could become a term of craft here. The way Nixon stuck around as a pejorative in politics, I think Hillary's going to wind up the same way. All right, Ken, got to let you go. Got to take a break for our top of the hour station identification, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And once again, the numbers if you want to call into the show, and I've been promised our toll-free line will be here next week, 512-716-1603. 512-716-1883, 512-716-1897. We're going to go to hear phones here. James in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Hope you're having a good day.
Well, except for the rain, it's doing fine.
Yeah, it rained here, too, pretty bad. Well, I wanted to talk about, what I don't understand is, everybody's like, when they talk about the war and everything, like, modern warfare, in your estimate, this modern warfare, if the modern technology we have today, what's the casualty count you are looking in?
It's hard to tell, especially in terms of civilian casualties, and the U.S. is admitting yes.
No, not civilians, not civilians. I'm talking about, if, say, you know how you had in World War II, where when we were fighting the Japanese and the Germans, and even when the Germans were fighting the Russians, there was all these mini battles between soldiers. That's what I mean, soldier-wise. I know the war from Iraq and Iran, even their major battles were at both sides, 15,000 plus. They would lose in these battles.
Well, based on prior history, we'll never know the actual losses until after the war is over. Vietnam's a good example. We weren't being told what the losses actually were. In fact, they were being understated. And then after Vietnam was over, they'd come out and say, well, we revised the figure, blah, 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 and finally worked it up to the total of 60,000. But they don't want to report on losses during the war because it acts to discourage people from supporting that war.
Would you believe all the losses from these 2 wars?
Actually, at this point, I'm sure that the losses for the enemy forces are being overstated, and the losses for our own forces are being understated. And we won't really have an accurate count until it's all over.
Because, even the enemies, no matter even if they're wearing, flip-flops and have trash, they build devices that go straight through our armor. And, if you could imagine, it's like the Panzerfaust, like imagine if that little millimeter of, that's what I'm trying to say. It's like the weaponry is not even, it doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters anymore because people are going to have to be committed to already. You know what I mean? And what I'm trying to say is, the figure of committability to some people, like basically going to be used as cannon fodder. Even people who are not don't even know the subject could look at it and be like, it's going to look like it's going to be pretty high. So why are we even testing it to begin with?
Well, from the point of view of people who start these wars, the only time they're concerned about how many people are being killed is when they start to run out of new people to throw on the front lines. And that's just the reality. But I keep going back to The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And in the very first part of the book, he lists out all the things that a ruler must have in order to prevail in war. One of them is you must have a military that believes in the moral rightness of the war, such that they will fight and, if necessary, die to carry out their orders. The second thing you need is a civilian population that believes in the moral rightness of the wars, so that they will quietly bear the hardships that war brings even to the victorious side. The U.S. government has neither of those two. And for that reason alone, I think it is an act of utter insanity to be continuing this war policy.
Well, what happens? What about if the U.S. government isn't really trying to win? And, like, we already found out that the war was run by the bank. And, you know, they all collude with each other, no matter if it's Russia or China or the West.
True.
And they all collude with each other. And what I'm saying is, I mean, China got the missile that could sink an aircraft carrier. That's 5,000 troops right there.
Yes.
What happens if the whole point is not to win? You know, what happens if the whole point if what we're seeing now in Syria and Libya and Iraq? What about the whole point? What about imagine this would be like the dream of the bankers, having the whole war just broken up into thousands.
Well, they tried that. They tried that once back in Vietnam, where, you know, the flight crews were being sent out to bomb empty fields. Suspected truck parks was the idea, and it was all about grinding up munitions, taxing the American people to pay for it all, and the banks, of course, making interest off of all that money. But if you'll remember, we did lose that one. Now, the situation in the Middle East, and again, this goes back to when General Wesley Clark...
And in the Ukraine, too. Remember, the Ukraine is still...
Hang on a minute. Okay. We're talking about the Middle East right now. And back in 2005, General Wesley Clark blew the whistle on this plan for that the U.S. wanted to conquer all the Middle East oil nations and force them to sell their oil only for the U.S. dollar. Okay, now we're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our broadcast. So that's why we're over there in the Middle East. But unfortunately, because the people in those countries understand they have not been subject to a genuine revolution from within, but an outside infiltration, they're standing in opposition. And that's why all of these have turned into these hopeless quagmires the U.S. is stuck in. And yes, the weapons makers are making money off of this. We're being driven deeper into debt to the bankers. But ultimately, if the U.S. loses, we don't have the resources to pay the bankers back. And so ultimately the bankers, you know, that are backing the U.S. side want the U.S. to win. Now, Ukraine is a different situation because that was going to be this covert overthrow of the Ukrainian government and the installation of Poroshenko, and they just sort of assumed that everybody in Ukraine would just go along with the new government. But that paradigm is gone, because the U.S. has played this same trick something like 50 times since the end of World War II, even against nations we're supposed to be friends with. And now everybody understands that's what's going on, and that's why the U.S. is meeting resistance in all of these. And we have these people, whether they're in Afghanistan or Ukraine or Libya or Yemen, and they're standing up and saying, no, we are not going to allow our country to be subject to foreign puppet rule. And that, of course, is a very good sentiment for people to have, including here in the United States of America, I might add.
But what happens if, like I said, what happens if they don't want puppet rule? What happens if they, even in the U.S., because, like, the U.S. agenda in the Middle East is to destabilize those countries who used to be allied with the Soviet Union, and also if they can create turmoil on their borders, and that's just more headache with Russia. But like in Syria, Assad doesn't control, like you said, Assad only controls that little enclave.
Not anymore.
Not
anymore.
Well, I mean, but
you know, have you not been paying attention to the maps ever since Russia came?
No, I have. But what I'm saying is the average Syrian couldn't freely drive from Damascus to the east of Syria without, and that's what I'm saying. Like Bizarre Foods on the Travel Channel had a Syrian episode. And those eastern cities were huge and beautiful, and they were full of Syrians. And that's what I'm trying to say, is the full control is not there. And that's what I think the bank. What happens if, like...
okay, I'm having trouble following you here because, first of all, that episode on Bizarre Foods was filmed like almost a year ago.
Yeah, but that's what I'm...
Okay, I'm not sure what you're trying to say here, but the reality is...
What I'm trying to say is, like, the security for one Syrian to drive from Damascus all the way to the... That's what I'm saying. The security's not there for the average citizen, not the leaders, not the troops, the average normal person who just wants to live his life.
Yeah, I understand that, and the U.S. is admitting that they're killing those people, the Syrian civilians who just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, James, we're going to let you go here and get on back to the news. Thank you very much for the phone call. All right. Getting on back to the economic news here. Obamacare, yet more bad news there. The Government Accountability Office just conducted an undercover enrollment investigation and found that there are no controls whatsoever on who can sign up for those subsidies. Nobody's checking. They basically found 100% of their fictitious enrollees got the subsidies without having to prove that they're U.S. citizens, without even having to prove their identity or demonstrate that they had an income-based need. They're just signing them up and handing the money out. All right, let's grab another phone call. Rick in D.C., aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Rick. I just wanted to make a comment about the congressman from Utah, Chaffetz.
Mm-hmm.
He issued a subpoena to the FBI. It is such a funny clip to watch it. You know, if your viewers can just go to YouTube and Google for FBI Get Served.
Yes.
It is hilarious.
Oh, the faces on those FBI agents, they were not expecting that one tiny bit.
Well, they sent that fella, Herring is his name. They sent him up there. He was not prepared in the least. They just walked all over him. And,
yeah.
I'm a lifelong Democrat, but, man, I'll tell you, listening to these guys, I just got to admire them. They're great. They're digging into it. Sooner or later, they're going to come up with the truth. It may be after the election, but golly, these guys are good. They're really good.
Well, Trey Gowdy, I mean, I absolutely agree that if Trump wins the White House, Trey Gowdy needs to be our new Attorney General. And we need people in government who actually know how to do the job. You know, not just people who are there because they had lots of money to give in donations. And if you look at, I've been saying all along, the quality of thinking coming out of Washington, D.C. has been very, very poor. And now we understand why. These are not people who are skilled in the business of running a government. They just have big wallets. That's their only qualification to be in the positions they're in.
Isn't that true? I was telling my wife, I mean, she wonders why there's so much depending on Hillary getting it back in, or getting into the, not back, she was there one time, but getting into the White House as president. And I told her it's like a big corporation. She's got hundreds, if not thousands of people depending on her to get in there. I mean, if she doesn't make it, I'm sure everything is just going to come filing out of everybody that's got anything to do with the emails or the foundation. I mean, right now, she can shut them up because she has the ability to get in there and give pardons to everyone or knock out investigations that are going on.
Yeah, and she absolutely will. And there's another aspect people need to look at. When they look at Hillary Clinton's campaign war chest and the huge amounts of money that have been given to her, all of those donations have strings attached to them. You know, at the very least, they're expecting to be ambassadors and top government officials, but there are probably bigger favors as well, especially from Wall Street. Hillary Clinton, as president, is not going to be working for the American people and the American nation. She's going to be repaying all the favors that she owes to the people who made her the president, if she can remember who they are.
And to veer off on another subject, too, I was chatting with some people about maternity leave.
Yes.
Trump is just, he's not offering, but he's saying that he thinks a 9-week maternity leave would be a good idea. And there was some news article on HuffPost saying that is sexist. I've read it 3 or 4 times, and I just don't get it.
Well, Huffington Post is firmly on board the Clinton camp. They're just going to say it's sexist no matter what. You know, Huffington Post, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but the women do have the babies. And that is just a reality, and all the PC in the world isn't going to change that. But, you know, what is wrong with young mothers having time to raise their babies in that very critical first period I think it's a perfectly appropriate thing to do. And maybe the Democrats ought to say, well, let's give the fathers the same time so that they can parent the child together. And, basically take a stick and beat off all those doctors with all those vaccines in the needles.
Well, that's what I told these people that were still, they thought 9 weeks was too little. And I said, as far as I know, Hillary has not mentioned anything about maternity leave. And that's probably because anything that takes a penny out of the bankster's pockets would be no good in her eyes to get elected. That just shut them right up.
Yeah, basically, our whole system, I think it was Wolf Blitzer came on out and said cash is first and morality is second. The idea is to keep everybody working and taxing the heck out of them. You squirted out the baby, get back to the office, make some money so we can tax you. Most feminists don't understand they got scammed back in the 1990s. Now, I'm old enough to remember when you could have just one parent working, and they made enough money to take care of the home, and the mother stayed home with the kids and was an influence on their upbringing. And then in the 1990s, they came on out, and they didn't say that women should have the option of going into the workplace. They made it a mandatory expectation that if you didn't go into the workforce, there was something wrong with you. And what this did is it doubled the workforce, and it doubled the opportunity for taxation. And as soon as all these women were in the workplace, the government changed the tax levels in order to make it impossible for the women to go back to being housewives. Because all of a sudden, all the deductions for family and everything were gone. And at that point, they were stuck. Both parents were working. The government took over the raising and rearing of the children through the corporate media. And it was a way to basically break the children away from the parents in order to allow the government to be raising them in a manner that suited the government's agenda, like Common Core and all this other nonsense.
Well, and I'm sure Kinder Care didn't mind that at all either.
Yeah, it was another. Well, we were still on the tail end of the transition to the service economy at that point, where we'd lost our manufacturing, and so they said, well, we'll have a service economy, which is we're going to prosper the nation by doing each other's laundry for a fee. And yeah, instead of the mother taking care of the children, we'll have a business that charges to take care of your child, and there'll be tax revenues out of that. It was all driven by the greed of the money junkies, both in Wall Street and in the government itself. That was what was driving all of their policies at that point.
So it looks like Ford doesn't think Trump is going to be president, I suppose.
Well,
they're moving small cars to Mexico.
Well, if Trump comes on in, he needs to change the tax code. I mean, back during the Bush administration, they literally wrote the tax code, changed the tax code to give an incentive to American manufacturers to move their jobs overseas. And I don't know what possessed them to think that it was going to be good for the economy, and maybe they were just thinking in terms of, this corporation gave me a huge donation last election, I owe them a favor, so we're going to make it easy for them to take the jobs to some place where labor is cheaper. But they weren't thinking about what was best for the nation as a whole. And if there is a major failing that we have seen in Washington, D.C. for the last quarter of a century, it is that they have forgotten their job is to think about what's best for the nation and its people as a whole, not just be out there selling favors, pay for play. And this latest document dump shows just how rampant this is. We have a government full of people who are not qualified for the jobs they're in, but are in them solely because they were able to scrape together enough money to buy their way to the top of power.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Mike, for taking my call, and I'm looking forward this week to see what Assange has on his
Yeah, we're all waiting for that one. We're all waiting for that 100,000 email document dump. That's going to be amazing. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go here. Coming up on a commercial break here, Moody's has issued warnings regarding both Kmart and Sears that they are on the verge of collapse. And remember, not too long ago, Sears borrowed millions and millions of dollars to try and capitalize through the holiday shopping season. That may not have been enough to get them through. So here we have two more iconic American retailers are about to vanish, and still the government insists the economy is in great shape here. Well, it certainly is for them. They're making out like bandits here. So we're going to take a break for commercials. We got a caller waiting on the line. We'll take that call as soon as we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I wanted to talk about Syria with that previous caller, but Syria's borrowed $300 million, I believe, and they couldn't do nothing with it. So by the end of next year, them and Kmart, there probably might be a few select stores left, but they're gone.
Well, you know, everybody's gearing up here for the holiday shopping season, and if past history is any guide, anybody who isn't able to get into the black over the holiday shopping season, they'll be gone January, February.
Which tells you all you need to know how the real economy is, not this phony number game.
Yep.
Mike, on Syria, a couple previous calls ago, Russia and Iran did in the amazing time they had, clear and hold. Basically, they have pushed back ISIS to where they're pretty much not a real threat in Syria anymore. Now, you got the rebel groups, but what he needs to understand, this is a desert, so there's not a town every, couple miles. You know, there's major cities, but it's a desert. People got to realize that. It's not pine trees and lawns all. You know, it's like in the Midwest. You know, it's like not everywhere in the Midwest is habitable, so people live in major metropolitan areas. You know, that's the places that are getting secured. And then they go to the crossroads and, take care of the supply routes. And, amazing for 8 months what the Russians and the Iranians, and remember, the Syrian Arab Army lives there, so they know all the routes and everything. That's why the U.S. doesn't want peace, because if they did, they would go directly to Assad with the Syrian Arab Army, because they know the terrain and all the routes and all the roads.
Well, you need to remember the Free Syria Army, 95% of them are not Syrian. They're hired mercenaries. And I think once ISIS is driven out of Syria and everybody realizes that the U.S. has just suffered another Vietnam, you're going to see all these rebel groups just accept Assad's offer of amnesty and put their guns down. Because, the U.S. will stop sending in weapons and supplies to their terrorists. I mean, the U.S. may be desperate enough to try a decapitation strike against Assad. But the reason Russia and Iran were able to be so effective in Syria is they really were going after the terrorists, and the U.S. never was. It was just an attempt to change the narrative on Syria away from we're going to kick out Assad, which was not getting a lot of public support, to we're going after ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which got a little bit more support from those people who didn't realize that it was just another lie.
And remember, like you said, there's an over and a covert, and they arm the rebels, and they know they give them to ISIS, so that's the transfer point of them also, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's a big game, but, pretty much the game is over. You know, like I said, there's going to be skirmishes and stuff, but, Russia and Iran has definitely secured a large part of that country. I mean, like I said, you're going to have attacks, but for the most part, that country is pretty much secured. I mean,
basically, Aleppo is it. Aleppo's the only place left that still has, any of these U.S.-backed terrorist groups in there, or ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Israel's trying to take some of the pressure off of them with their attacks into the Golan. But it is. The U.S. is on the verge of having another Vietnam, and I'm sure Barack Obama doesn't want that as part of his presidential legacy, and he's willing to sacrifice as much of other people's money and children as it takes to at least put it off until somebody else is in the White House. But that's what's going on here. They're losing, and if they lose Syria, it's going to be a major setback for the larger agenda of war across the Middle East and potential war against Russia and China. I think it'd be a very, very good thing if the U.S. gets kicked out of Syria, because it might calm the whole situation down, I hope.
Hopefully. All right, thanks a lot, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. Now then, over in Russia, Vladimir Putin has floated a very good idea. And that is that Russia is not going to allow any bankers suspected of illegal activity to leave the country or to move their assets to other countries to protect themselves. Now, here in the U.S., if you're a banker and you're suspected of illegal activity, you can leave, you can send your money to Panama or something else. I think it's a good idea. I think Putin's had a good idea. We need it here. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. Got a caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And before we take this phone call, a couple of things we need to catch up on. The corporate media is already on the attack against Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and Guccifer 2.0, and they're trying to equate the leaking of these emails, which basically constitute crimes against the nation, with nude photos of celebrities that get stolen and put on the net. And I mean, that's how desperate they are to try. You shouldn't be looking at this. Is like looking at naked pictures of a celebrity. Common decency says you should not even look at these things. I mean, they're really in a panic out there. Bill Clinton is out on the campaign trail on behalf of his wife Hillary, and the story has changed again. Now they're saying that Hillary Clinton did not have pneumonia. She just had the flu, and that's why she recovered so soon miraculously. Obviously, some of Hillary's people are listening to these shows to pick up on how their previous story isn't making any sense, and then they adjust the story and they move forward, not realizing that we're just pointing out that the story keeps changing all the time. It's like the old Maxwell Smart TV show. Would you believe? No, I wouldn't believe that. Well, would you believe this? No, don't believe that either. Don't believe anything coming out of the Clintons' mouths or the corporate media. So they're definitely out there, and I'm looking at this one guy, his eyes are wide. How could we even tolerate this kind of thing? And they're doing everything they can to basically not talk about what these emails reveal about what's been going on inside the Democratic National Committee, outright corruption, pay for play. Oh, it's a horrible thing. We shouldn't do it. Okay. All right, let's take a phone call. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, you talked about some economic news. I hate to call back, but I heard you talk about Sears and all the other stuff. There's a website your listeners should actually tune into, and I know it's been manipulated here and there, just like the stock market has with quantitative easing and plunge protection, but they've messed with this a little bit too. But I did notice today was the single biggest drop in the Baltic Dry Index that I've ever seen of minus 40 points today. It went down to 756, which is not the all-time low. But it is something I do watch, and living close to the Bay Area, I do notice the container ships coming in, not as frequent and not as loaded. And I think there was a story you had on your website talking about this fourth biggest shipping container company that had 40 or 50 of their big container ships out in the ocean that will not make it to port. They're filed bankruptcy or something like that. So, like you said, when they tell you that everything's looking great, the economy's looking great, look for what should be in there and isn't. And just wanted to throw that at your listeners. The website is dryships.com. And you can click on Daily Market Report, and you should get a new value every day to check the container ships, how that's going. Well,
you're talking about the Hanjin shipping company that went bankrupt. Now, its 40 to 50 ships are not out there floating in the middle of the ocean. They're all basically held at the current ports where they are. Those ships that were at sea have been allowed to reach their destination, at which point they're basically being locked down. And there is a huge amount of cargo on board. Now, this, of course, is the season when all of the goodies for the holiday shopping season are starting to move from the manufacturers to the retailers. And so it's very, very significant that we're seeing these numbers go down the way they are. A lot of people are very concerned that the lockup of Hanjin is going to have an impact. They, of course, go into Seattle and San Francisco, and from there they backtrack via Matson to here in Hawaii. And as a matter of fact, looking out the window over here, I can see some cargo ships just riding at anchor, and they've been there for about a week now. So, yeah, the whole system is very much locking up at this point.
Yeah. Hey, thanks a lot, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch to Dennis in New York. Aloha, Dennis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Am I still on?
You're on the air.
Listen, everybody thought Hillary and the influenza or pneumonia, and I got a new spin on this whole thing. Years ago, my wife worked in a restaurant, and there was a chef there, and he had this big pitcher. It looked like a big pitcher of water. He would drink that all day. Well, it turned out it was vodka. If you think about Hillary, when she was on her plane, showing off her plane to the press, she had a coughing fit, and she said, I need water. She was offered a plastic bottle of water, and she turned around and they gave her a plastic glass of a clear liquid. I think it was vodka.
I would disagree, because if you're in the middle of a coughing fit and you take a gulp of vodka, it's going to make the coughing worse immediately.
You don't think there's a possibility she's a high-functioning alcoholic?
I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. I'm saying in that particular situation and context where you're already coughing, taking a slug of vodka is going to make it worse.
You're probably right on that, Mike. One other thing about this Chelsea's apartment, I think that's just a code word. That's a code word when they have to get fixed up. They go there, and that's where they have the little infirmary set up there. Is code name Chelsea's apartment. And when Hillary or Bill need a fix on something, that's when they go there.
Well, we've established there is a medical facility on the same floor with Chelsea's condo. I mean, it's literally right next door.
Yeah, and I just thought it seemed logical that they would give a code name to everything, because everything with them is covert and, under the board,
Okay.
Anyway, one other thing, Mike. Chelsea Manning is wasting away in that prison and then getting treated horribly. And something I thought about last week, and it keeps popping up. What if Chelsea Manning, what if the sex change operation was not his idea or her idea? What if this was a form of punishment that this evil government enacted upon this person?
No, Chelsea Manning made it very, very clear that it wanted this operation, and the last word I have is that the U.S. Army has now agreed to provide the sex change surgery, and Chelsea Manning has ended her hunger strike.
Yeah, well, it's good to see that you're keeping an eye on things and putting things up on your website to keep us in touch with what's going on with that poor individual, which I think was really a hero, I
agree. And, we used to have laws in this country that protected whistleblowers, and now it's gone completely the other way. Traitors to our country are being protected, and whistleblowers are just being crushed. They're trying to find some way that, they can shut people down from blowing the whistle, because as we get closer to the election, we're seeing more and more leaks come out. That WorldNet Daily story where some of the Clinton insiders are now openly confirming, anonymously, that Hillary has stage 3 Parkinson's.
It's getting real scary, Mike. I just hope Trump can pull it off, that they can stop this election fraud. We have to give him a landslide. I'm going to have a T-shirt printed up, and it's going to say deplorable. I'm proud of it.
Yes, a lot of people are already doing that. I've been thinking about the same thing myself. Another deplorable for Donald Trump.
Yeah, we're all calling each other deplorable, and we're loving it.
Yes.
Listen, Mike, thank you very much. I listen to your show every day.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Errol in the Netherlands. Aloha. Been a while since I've heard from you. What's on your mind?
Hello, Errol from the Netherlands.
Yes.
Well, I have analyzed this weird, how do you call it, moment when Hillary stepped into that car. And when I saw the other girl came out, just 2 or 3, I think 2 or 3 days, maybe 1 day.
It was just 2 hours.
The doppelganger.
Yes.
Doppelganger, or the how do you call it?
The double.
The double, exactly. And I was like, okay, And I want to say one thing to the American people. it doesn't matter who you vote for. When you look where you vote for, all your taxes, most of the taxes go to Israel.
Well, I think Donald Trump might pull back on that. He's making all the nice, polite noises about Israel, but if you read the if you read the Israeli media, it is very clear that they do not think they're going to get the treatment from Donald Trump that they expect from Hillary Clinton. They want Hillary in the White House. She will do what Israel tells her to do. Donald Trump is actually back saying there has to be a middle ground between Israel and Palestine, between the interests of Israel and the interests of the United States. And that, of course, is an unacceptable position to the government of Israel.
And that is exactly right. Because when you look, I have studied it, and when you look at it, there is also I don't know if you know it, Mike, they have brought out how do you call it? It's called Brain Dead. Do you know that series, Brain Dead?
No, I'm afraid I haven't seen that. I don't actually watch a lot of TV.
When you see that series, Brain Dead, that makes a lot of sense, because in Brain Dead, the series is saying our government is infiltrated by other. You must see this. It's very funny. It's funny. I'm looking in it. It's a series. You are yourself are how do you call it? You're a movie making special effects and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You must see that. And when you see that, the interesting part is, yes, they're going along with that way, And what I'm want to say to you is, Hillary, hey, left or right, she's finished. She's just finished. What we are now going to see is Donald Trump, but maybe there can be another guest. So, like, Bernie Sanders. Maybe Bernie Sanders is going to stand up, And that is interesting. I'm just seeing this from a perspective here from the Netherlands. I don't want to go into your how do I call it? How do you call it? Your voting and everything.
Oh yeah,
There is no vote. There is no voting.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. It is very important Americans get on out to vote, because if you don't vote, that leaves a voter registration available for Hillary's people to use. And steal. So you've got to use up those voter registrations, and it is not enough for Donald Trump to be slightly ahead. He needs a landslide. And, going into the election, they may come on out and say, well, Donald Trump is comfortably ahead. You don't need to bother showing up to the polls. There's all kinds of dirty tricks that they can do. But everybody needs to vote this election. We need to give Donald Trump an overwhelming landslide that can't be reversed through election fraud. And besides that, we need to scrape out the U.S. Congress, get rid of these Israel firsters, these war hawks, these money junkies, and give Donald Trump a Congress that will work with him to bring about change rather than simply obstructing his every move.
Yes, but that, and the beautiful thing, somebody says, I'm also following this from the Netherlands. Someone said, and that was very an intelligent message. He said, Donald Trump says this and that, but eventually that's just a prospect to get us together again. We need, and I told you that some time ago, Mike, we need to just do business with our countries, with Europe, with America, and everybody, with everybody. Not make war, not make people suffer. We know what we can do, and Donald Trump is the man. I'm totally with you. Donald Trump is the man. He says, this Russia, that Russia, so Russia. Well, that's the thing you must do in politics. That is politics.
Well, there's a couple of things here, and then I got to let you go. We're coming up on a commercial break here. First of all, Donald Trump comes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Donald Trump comes out of the world of business, where if you get a reputation for not keeping your promises, you don't stay in business very long. And that stands in stark contrast with our professional political class who lie about everything from the moment they get up to the moment they go to bed. So already Donald Trump is coming in with a lot more credibility than, well, Hillary Clinton. Second of all, the reason the U.S. is on a war agenda is they've given manufacturing away. Nobody wants our GMO. The U.S. doesn't actually have anything at the moment other countries want to buy. And that's going to be Donald Trump's biggest problem coming on in. He's going to have to immediately move to bring jobs back to this country, to revive manufacturing, possibly even ban GMOs. So once again, the United States is producing products other countries want to buy. And that's going to be a major, major uphill battle. All right, real quick, let's grab Mateus in Canada. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, I think I'm only going to have enough time for my joke.
Okay.
So, regarding the Volkswagen doing the limited hangout for blaming a couple of bad apples for rigging the emission systems.
Yes.
Well, that's what they get for letting Apple set internal policy. Do I have time for anything else, or that's it?
You got about a minute and a half.
Okay. My impression of the dinosaur media covering current events. Okay, it's an impression both of the media and of we the people's response. Pictures worth 1,000 words. You have to close your eyes and visualize the body language of a cat trying to pass a hairball.
Yeah, okay.
That's it. That's my impression. And Colin Powell, the most interesting thing that was leaked is people aren't talking about. Colin Powell, quote, to his friend, quote, I told you about the gig I lost at a university because she so overcharged them they came under heat and couldn't get any speaking fees for a while. I should send her a bill. So what this is saying is the pay-for-play after-the-fact payout bribe, Hillary got too greedy and made it too obvious by overcharging that it attracted attention, and now Colin Powell's pay-for-play after-the-fact post-bribe, now he can't collect because everyone's watching, and he should send Hillary a bill for the loss of his
He should.
bribe.
He should. I think he should. All right, Mateus, we're going to let you go. Take a break for commercials. You got another caller waiting on the line as soon as we come back from these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And if you're wondering what all that racket is in the background, we are having a line of thunderstorms come over, and it's a wet day, and so we're going to try and finish the show without getting knocked off the air like we did that other time here. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hello, Mike. Do you know how many supporters Hillary Clinton has?
2, I think. Huma Abedin and Bill.
Side.
I'm sorry?
2, 1 on each arm.
Very, very good. Very good.
About what's wrong with her. Everybody seems to be trying to figure out the one thing that's wrong, and I just want to raise the issue of not negating the possibility of comorbidity, meaning more than one thing going on at a time.
Absolutely. I mean, we know there's the concussion, there's the blood clot. That's certainly an established fact there. The prism in her eyeglasses suggests there is a problem with her brain stem, and it doesn't rule out the fact that she could still have Parkinson's on top of all of that. I mean, she's on in years. And it's entirely possible that she's got multiple illnesses and conditions going on, and we, the voters, have a right to know all about it before we entrust this person with the keys to the nuclear weapons.
I would agree. I saw that one doctor's explanation of the possibility, of dehydration and her taking levodopa and all that. Personally, actually, I still sort of think that those original reports that said she had subcortical vascular dementia with complex partial seizures. I still think that could easily be the primary thing, you know, that was there, and then this could be further complicated, you know, by other conditions, you know, as a result of it. So anyway, we'll know eventually, I guess.
Well, I think we need to know before the actual election, but you're absolutely right. There could be multiple issues with her. And certainly one of the problems when you do have Parkinson's and you start falling down a lot is you can have other injuries because you'll black out completely. You're not putting your arms out to stop the fall, and you can literally slam your head onto the ground at full speed. And that may, in fact, have been what happened when she did have her little accident with the concussion. So, but again, we need to know. The only thing that we know for certain is they're trying to cover it up. They're trying to lie to us and say that she's fine. Apparently, the Hillary campaign just came out with another letter from her doctor saying she's absolutely fine and hunky-dory. And again, they've changed the story. It wasn't pneumonia. It was only flu, and that's why she's back on the campaign trail tomorrow. But the insiders are saying the Democratic leadership in Hillary's campaign, they are deathly afraid of her having to actually debate Donald Trump. Because...
Oh, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
Now, with her being a sociopath, I don't think she much cares about anybody else. But I would say that if anybody cares about her, Bill Clinton or Chelsea Hubble or any Huma Abedin, if anybody cares about her, then they would pull her out of this because she's a tremendous risk. I mean, if she blacks out,
they're all about Hillary as the first female president in U.S. history. Thanks a lot for the phone call, Glenn. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And once again, the phone numbers to call into the program, 512-716-1603, 512-716-1883, 512-716-1897. Now, let's get on over about the immigration situation, because over in Germany, I think Angela Merkel, boy, it is really coming down out there. I think Angela Merkel has come to accept that she's going to lose her next election, and she is trying to prove that she is a loyal minion of the New World Order. She is still defending her open borders immigration policy and refusing to impose migrant caps, even though her key government partners and her own party are saying it's time to have some limits on what's going on. And Merkel is saying, no, we're going to open the borders. Everybody's coming on in. Now, there's a new scandal that has come on out about this whole refugee issue, because we have been told that these refugees are fleeing war and disaster and starvation, which, to be honest, are caused by all these U.S. military interventions. Nobody talks about shutting them down as a way to deal with the refugee crisis. But you probably heard these recent reports where places like Sweden can't actually find most of the refugees that are supposed to be there. And according to Die Welt, what they've discovered is the refugees are being lured to Europe with all these promises of free stuff. They'll fill out the paperwork to qualify for asylum, and then they go back home. So obviously their homes aren't these horrible places of war and starvation. They go back home and hang on out waiting for word that their asylum status has been granted. I mean, it's just a gigantic scam. Now, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker is out there calling for unity in the face of all these member states of the European Union who are starting to strain at the leash. Brexit, of course, had the Brexit vote. They're trying to find some way that they can derail that. Marine Le Pen is already out there saying that she is going to support a referendum for leaving the EU. We're hearing the same thing from Italy. We're hearing the same thing from Spain. And basically, the EU is collapsing. And it's collapsing because it started as a free trade zone only, and the European Commission got too big for their britches and started trying to run the place and federalize it as a single nation state under their control. Then they poured in all the refugees to try and destroy the regional identity of the member nations, They literally came on out and said, if we put enough Syrian refugees into Sweden, well, then it's not really Sweden anymore, is it? And when you add to that the predatory practices of that European Central Bank, I mean, that was the built-in self-destruct device right from day one. And they're trying to figure out some way they can hold it together. But the ordinary people of Europe, they've had it. Because of the refugee crisis, they've gone back to closed borders, that whole open borders. Schengen situation was supposed to be the beautiful thing about the European Union. That's now gone. All the upside is gone. They're left with the downside. They want out. Now, there's an article that came out of INFOWARS.com. Groundswell of discontent worries the IMF. The International Monetary Fund is very upset that ordinary people are just not going along with this one world government, new world order, one private central bank. And the globalists are out there screaming about Donald Trump has become a focus for the anti-New World Order movement, and they're out there trying to blame it. It's that Donald Trump's fault. He's brought about the rise of the anti-New World Order movement. That's not accurate. It's not even close to being accurate. It's not even in the same time zone with being accurate. Trump didn't create the anti-New World Order movement. The New World Order created the anti-New World Order movement by proving itself to be a bunch of corrupt money junkies, an extension, a carry forward of how corrupt our national governments are. Who wants more of the same? We've seen how corrupt the government of nation states are. Why would we accept a larger version of the same thing lording over vast regions of planet Earth, leading to a single golden throne of Earth that will be even more corrupt and tyrannical? Now, down in Australia, a newly elected Senator, Malcolm Roberts, used his first speech to call for Australia to exit from the United Nations. And I can understand why. The United Nations has proved itself to be completely impotent, especially in the face of the crimes of Israel against Gaza and the West Bank. When Israel became a member of the United Nations, there were two requirements on its membership. One, a Palestinian right of return, and two, if the Palestinians themselves chose not to return to the villages and homes that were taken from them during the creation of Israel, Israel would financially compensate them for their losses. Israel has not complied with either requirement. If the United Nations really was doing its job, they would have kicked Israel out by now. But, of course, any time the UN tries to hold Israel to account, the United States goes in there and goes, veto, 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 veto. All right, I'm going to do a shout-out here to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. We're talking about the international news and various issues here. Now then, remember the Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 crash was lost over Ukraine. My personal theory is Poroshenko set up a warplane to shoot down Vladimir Putin's presidential jet, which was flying in the same area at the same time, painted with the same colors used by Malaysian Airlines, and the pilot got the wrong plane. Well, of course, it's all been blame Russia, blame Russia, blame Russia, blame Russia, including the imposition of sanctions. Well, the European Union Council was finally forced to admit that the claimed link between the Russian corporation Almaz-Antey and the MH17 crash in eastern Ukraine didn't exist. There's no evidence for it whatsoever, and as a result, they're going to basically rescind the sanctions on that company. But they were all lying to push their political agenda, because that's how politicians are. They're not concerned with facts. They're not concerned with the truth. It's how can I push my agenda. More money, more power, more control here. Now, over at UC Berkeley, the chancellor has received a letter of complaint from Rossman Benjamin, signed by the heads of 43 Jewish civil rights and education advocacy organizations, expressing their deep concern about a student-taught credit-bearing course called Palestine, a Settler Colonial Analysis. And as the name implies, all the course did was talk about the history of the settlements by Israelis in the occupied West Banks. And these Zionists basically declared that this is anti-Israel, to talk about how Israel is building illegal settlements on other people's lands. And the chancellor of UC Berkeley buckled under and canceled the class. And he should have been doing a little more homework, because over at City University of New York, where they were getting all these complaints about how all these political science courses about what Israel's been doing were anti-Semitic. They hired lawyers and basically went through, and what they found is expressions of political opposition to the actions of the State of Israel do not qualify as anti-Semitism. And such expressions of criticism to the acts and policies of the State of Israel are protected speech under the First Amendment. See, Israel's attitude is any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism. Now, can you imagine defenders of the Nazis getting on up and saying, you're just being anti-German? Hitler didn't do anything wrong, you just hate the German people. And we would laugh at the absurdity of it, and yet Israel keeps getting away with that because the media goes along. USS Liberty, oh, you're just being an anti-Semite. Illegal settlements, oh, you're just being an anti-Semite. 5 dancing Israelis at the World Trade Towers, oh, you're just being an anti-Semite. It's ridiculous. The issue is not the ethnic group of Israel. It's not their religion. It's not their language. It's their behavior. And criticizing the behavior of any government anywhere on earth is, as these lawyers concluded, protected speech under the First Amendment, which is why Israel hates our Bill of Rights. Now, we have been poking fun at the gun grabbers and talking about how up in Chicago, which is held aloft as the model of gun control in the United States, the violence in the streets is completely out of control. And there's a very interesting story that was found over at WakingTimes.com, where an ex-Chicago gang member has released a video saying that crates of fully automatic firearms would regularly be found in alleyways and back streets of urban Chicago in the early hours of the morning, basically giving free illegal weapons to the gangs of Chicago. And he said it's obviously some kind of political design, because it's only in the low-income areas. The firearms were Class 3 automatic firearms. And the guns are everywhere. This is where they're coming from. Criminals aren't allowed to buy guns. Chicago has strict gun control. These weapons are being brought in by somebody. Well, who do you think that might be? And if you go back and you look at all the guns the U.S. government is giving to everybody, like remember Fast and Furious? They armed Mexican drug cartels with military weapons. Remember Iran-Contra in the 1980s that launched the Clintons' political and economic fortunes, where the CIA was manufacturing and smuggling untraceable military weapons down to Nicaragua for the Contras to use against the Sandinistas. The U.S. government is in the gun-running business. And they use that inner-city crime in Chicago as an argument for banning guns. That's how sick this is. Now, over in San Jose, California, the city council is looking at a ban on all guns within city limits, even within your own home, to defend your home against crime. The San Jose City Council is seriously saying you should not have a right to protect your home from criminals. You can just call the police. They'll be there in 20, 30 minutes. Then they'll use civil forfeiture to steal everything in your house, and if you resist, they'll shoot you dead. It is completely ridiculous. Now, the New York Times is looking for a new climate change editor who will support the story of human-caused global warming, because the big push is on. They need that carbon tax. They need to convince you to ignore your own lying eyes and trust in those pretty little charts and graphs that are coming out of NASA and NOAA. Oh, it's hot. It's just hot. It's so hot. It's broiling, broiling, broiling. It's actually snowing in the Sierras. Kirkwood Mountain. Now, you remember one of the big icons of Al Gore's global warming movement were those poor, suffering polar bears. They're on the verge of drowning. Actually, polar bears can swim. More than that, they can float. Their fur is actually hollow. That's what makes it look white. And it makes it very buoyant. And it's also insulation. That air gap in the middle of the fur strands is good thermal insulation. Polar bears float. They can swim 60 miles. This idea that they were drowning was ridiculous. They're on the verge of extinction. Well, actually, no, because apparently up at this remote Arctic post being manned by Russian scientists, they have a surplus of these close to extinct polar bears. And it's a bit of a problem. They have no weapons other than rubber bullets, and because they're already snowed and iced in, they can't be extracted for at least a month, and the polar bears are just ripping everything up there. The old Farmer's Almanac was right. It's going to be a very hard winter, the latest in a long series. And NASA's out there saying, oh, it's hot. We've got pretty charts and graphs. It's just broiling out there. And, yeah, maybe it's cold where you are, but trust us, the rest of the world is on fire. Boy, talk about if at first you don't succeed, lie again. And partly it's because they're desperate to impose a carbon tax on you. The other part of it is, right now, the corporate media is struggling to hang on to what little remains of their credibility. The American people don't trust the corporate media anymore, and the exposure of yet another organized plan to deceive the public about global warming could be the final blow to the corporate media. All right. Now then, let's talk about computers here a little bit. VMware Workstations installer loads dangerous junk, so patch it ASAP. This gets into the area of what's called virtual printing, and apparently there's a weakness there where the so-called desktop hypervisor can be tricked into executing almost any code at all. Now, over in Great Britain, security researchers are basically saying that during 2015, there were 9,000 data breaches costing an estimated 300 million British pounds sterling, and the government doesn't do a thing about it. Now, who is doing things about it? There is a group called No More Ransom, and this is an industry group. It's a collective. They're private citizens, and they have come out with tools to clear computers of ransomware. They're giving away free decryption keys and other tools to get rid of the infections. And the group has basically been handing the stuff out for free. Now, it doesn't work in the case of the ransomware that isn't really encrypting everything but deleting it, so please maintain your backups. But here's the important point. These are private individuals with far less resources than are available to the government, and yet somehow they're able to do the job that the U.S. government with far more resources cannot, or more to the point, will not do. And it raises a very disturbing possibility. We know that our government is currently engaged in a program of pillage against law-abiding American citizens with the civil forfeiture laws. We know Kaspersky has identified one hacker group, the Equation Group, as being the NSA. The FBI's official recommendation if you get hit with ransomware is pay the ransom. And it raises a very disturbing possibility that the ransomware epidemic is just another way that the desperately broke and hopelessly in debt U.S. government is plundering and pillaging their own people. Because if this small group of individuals are able to defeat the ransomware, why isn't the NSA? Why can't the FBI? Why can't the NSA? Or are those people in all these positions simply in their positions because they were generous donors to the last presidential campaign? Is the entire U.S. federal government hopelessly inept or corrupt? Could be both. Take your pick. Something else that came out, well, actually, we got to take another break for commercials here. When we come on back, I got a funny story. You're going to love this one. Palm to forehead moment. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And one of the things that came out of Guccifer's latest dump of DNC emails, apparently at one point, the people over at the DNC realized their emails had been hacked and the passwords were known. So what did they do? They emailed new passwords to everyone. Good thinking. Good thinking there. All right. Now, story coming out of CNET.com, which is a good resource for things having to do with computers. Apparently, sites owned by Viacom, Mattel, Hasbro, and Jumpstart were caught tracking children's online activity, which is a violation of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act of 1998, and they've been hit with a collective fine of $835,000. And I'm sure this was all being done for marketing purposes and figuring out what the little kiddies want to do, but it really has gone overboard. And in a lot of cases, this kind of tracking isn't even accurate. And I'll give you a good example. In the course of putting together stories for What Really Happened, I'll do a lot of web searches on things that normally would not be of interest to me, only to find my email box loaded up with ads to buy things that I really don't want, but obviously resulted from a web search at some point. So I'm sure by now they have a huge file on Michael Rivero's purchase preferences, and 99% of it's junk. It's not relevant. Okay, let's see here. All right, let me put that away for now. Apparently John McCain is having issues with Twitter, because he just had this hearing on cybersecurity, and the point of the hearing seems to have been to get Admiral Mike Rogers to say the nation would be less safe if Cybercom Command was split away from the NSA. And this is a contradiction to what Rogers said at a conference himself, that NSA wants to go and do their cryptography, and the cybersecurity division ought to be its own. McCain is out there now claiming hackers are accessing the Arizona voting system. So it looks like he may lose his election, and he's already getting ready to say, oh, it was hacked by those evil Russians. And apparently he's also got an issue with Twitter's long-term refusal to allow DataMiner to sell Twitter data to the CIA. Now, ever since we found out from Edward Snowden, who I hope Donald Trump will pardon, I've pointed out that data mining social media is a waste of time. Everybody lies on social media, especially if they're trying to get a hot date for the weekend. They exaggerate things. They use old pictures of themselves. They brag about what they've done and what they own, and they exaggerate. There were several cases where the Internal Revenue Service was scanning through Facebook posts looking for people who owned things that the Internal Revenue Service didn't think they ought to be able to afford, given their income level. And they went out and investigated a bunch of people, and every time they came up short, finding out that it was just a story on Facebook. Social media is not a reliable source of raw intelligence, and still they're out there playing with these games. Now, down in Brazil, and we've reported this before, but it is worth repeating. Brazil is now out there saying that Zika does not cause birth defects. And Zika has been around for 70 years. It's actually a very mild illness. But everybody was pointing the finger at Zika when Brazil suffered an... we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I'm getting a whole bunch of emails. Apparently, we have a gecko that hangs out by the Atlantean sword there and comes and goes. And every time he shows up, I get emails. 22 years in the truth business, and the gecko's getting the fan email. I mean, that's very, very humbling. Yeah, Claire's laughing in the other room. Somebody actually posted a YouTube video, just a clip, 10-second clip of the gecko running up the wall behind here. Oh, my goodness. Next, I'll get sued by the Geico people. All righty, now then, getting on back to the story. Brazil is now saying the Zika virus does not cause microcephalic babies. And their rationale is really very simple. Zika's been around for 70 years. It never caused these problems before. Zika is actually a very mild illness. And Brazil got this sudden epidemic of microcephalic babies the year following establishment of a mandatory vaccination program for pregnant women. But, of course, we're never allowed to question the safety and efficacy of vaccines. And so immediately all the vaccine companies are saying, oh, it's Zika. Zika's doing it. It's a horrible thing, Zika. And that, of course, triggered off this eradication program here in the United States of America, focused on a pesticide called NALED, which actually can cause microcephalic babies, as well as killing off benign insect species such as honeybees. And we find out then that the governor of Florida, where they're doing most of this right now, has a financial link to the company that has been hired to eradicate the mosquitoes carrying Zika. And if you really think about it, they're actually causing a lot more damage than if they had just left well enough alone. Even the CDC is saying most people will self-vaccinate to the Zika virus. In many ways, it's like dengue. Now, we've all heard dengue fever, and it sounds scary, and it is. For a small percentage of the people who get it, it can go hemorrhagic, and they can have a very horrible end. About 20% of the people who get dengue fever, it presents as kind of a flu or a cold. That's what happened when I got it. Most people who get dengue fever never even know they have it. That's how benign it is. But they're out there saying, we've got microcephalic babies right after the vaccine program starts. It must be Zika. We're going to spray for Zika. Money, 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 money. Now, Hillary Clinton, as part of her campaign, has come out with a new book. Whether she wrote it or not is almost irrelevant. The book is called Stronger Together, and it supposedly outlines the policies Hillary Clinton would pursue if she were able to steal the White House. And they describe it as a blueprint for America's future. Sounds vaguely familiar on that one. And apparently it has sold a grand total of 3,000 copies in its first week. That is an epic disaster. And according to the New York Times, which is reporting on this story, a book's first week sales account for basically a third of the total sold, which means she's going to get a grand total of $9,000 out of this book. Nobody's buying it. I remember when It Takes a Village came out. Oh, it's a bestseller, it's going to be this and it's going to be that, and then 6 months later it was in the manager's closeout bin. And the message there is clear. People aren't interested in Hillary's policies. They are not buying the book. The real support is not there. It's a manufactured illusion. Speaking of illusions, we are hearing that Hillary Clinton was very angry over the fact that somebody got a video of her stumbling on Sunday, which wasn't supposed to happen. They worked to keep the press away from her for these situations, but somebody got the video. It went viral. They tried to buy it up and take it off the net, but the damage was already done. And Hillary is apparently dropping the blame for all of this on the Secret Service, who are supposed to be out there smashing cameras and whatever all else. Well, let's be fair to the Secret Service here. They were holding Hillary up. They were keeping her from falling over. And chasing off the guy with the camera was probably not a priority. But former Secret Service protective detail members who've worked with the Clintons before are saying that when Hillary gets angry, the ashtrays will be flying. And a lot of the Clintons' protective detail, when Bill Clinton was president, asked to be transferred off. It got that difficult dealing with Hillary. When she's away from the public eye and away from the cameras, she screams, she belittles people. She's not a very nice individual, and the former Secret Service people will tell you that. One of them's got a book out, and it provides some insights into exactly the real character of Hillary Clinton. And again, even under the best of circumstances, somebody who loses their temper that easily is a danger when they're holding the keys to the nuclear weapons. There are so many reasons that Hillary should not be allowed into the White House. And if you're looking for a moment of clarity for the November elections, stop worrying about whether you've got reasons to vote for Donald Trump or not, and think of all the reasons you have to vote against Hillary Clinton. And when you approach the election from that point of view, it's a very easy decision to make. Hillary is dangerous. She's dangerous to the nation. She represents a continuation of the narcocracy, of all the corruption we have seen in our government going back 30 years to that CIA gun and drug running operation that launched it all. Now, lately we have been seeing how a lot of people are starting to sue for being defamed. As you know, this gun group is suing Katie Couric for $12 million for deceptively editing her anti-gun documentary to make them look foolish. And Glenn Beck has reached a settlement in a lawsuit from a Saudi Arabian student, Abdul Rahman Al-Harbi, 20-year-old Saudi scholarship student living in Boston. Glenn Beck identified him as the person who funded the Boston Marathon bombings. And he made that statement even after federal officials made it clear this student had nothing to do with it. But a story is a story, and Glenn Beck went out with this thing, and to nobody's surprise, in March of 2014, Al-Harbi filed a suit in which he accused Beck and Beck's companies, The Blaze and Mercury Radio Arts, and Beck's distributor, Premier Networks, of defamation and slander. And they finally reached a settlement, the details of which are being kept confidential. But it's time to start fighting back against all these people in corporate media who are just saying whatever they're being told to say. And sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't. If you go back and you look at that Fox News synthetic bovine growth hormone lawsuit, these two reporters had an absolute ironclad case for wrongful termination. They were assigned to do a story about Monsanto's synthetic bovine growth hormone. It was supposed to be a puff piece about what a great product it was and all farmers should use it. And they discovered that people who were consuming the meat and dairy products from the treated cows were suffering a whole range of mysterious medical problems. And they reported that. And Monsanto, which advertised heavily on Fox News, said, you will change it. Fox management said, you will change it. The reporters stood their ground and said, no, the public needs to know that this is going on. And Fox News fired them. And these reporters sued for wrongful termination. And to tell you just how bad the corporate media has gotten in this country, the reporters lost their case on appeal when the courts ruled that because there is no law requiring the corporate media to be truthful with the American people, that management at corporate media can order their prostitutes and correspondents to lie to the public, and if they refuse, they can be legally fired. So that's all you need to know about the corporate media. They are there to feed you whatever the corporate owners and political powers that be want you to be thinking. And so it's no surprise that public trust in the corporate media is at an all-time record low. And it's not likely to improve anytime soon. In fact, 2016 could be the watershed year in which the independent media basically starts commanding the majority of the audience. In fact, we may already be there. I have more people reading my website than most big city newspapers. I don't have the ad revenues to show for it, but that's the reality out there. All right, let's talk about science and nature. As you know, there's a major typhoon bearing down on Taiwan. It's Cat 5. They're going to have a really ugly time. We're looking at a couple of days of rough weather here. It's not a hurricane, but a lot of thunderstorms coming on in. So we're going to be powering off the computer as soon as the show is over. Meanwhile, down on the Big Island, there are indications that Kilauea volcano may be about to have a major eruption. Now, if you've ever been to the Big Island and visited the volcanoes, you'll know that Kilauea Crater, and there's this wonderful little hotel called Volcano House that sits on the edge of the larger crater and overlooks Kilauea Crater. It's not the original building, but Volcano House has been there for a long time. Mark Twain used to stay there when he would go visit the Big Island. And they have a beautiful koa wood piano, which I've got a picture of Claire playing that. But if you look at Kilauea, there's a flat bottom because it's basically a crusted over lava pool. And over time, it goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down. Well, now it's at its highest level in 42 years, and they're saying this could indicate that there's going to be a sizable eruption, and they can be very, very spectacular. So we'll see what happens down there, and if at all possible, get on down there. Over in Japan, the Sakajima volcano, I'm mispronouncing it, I know I am, because I don't have it in front of me. That's showing signs of erupting as well. All right, so let's step on back here and hit the high points of this latest dump from Guccifer 2.0 of internal DNC emails. And, of course, the corporate media is going ballistic. They're trying to equate whistleblowing on government corruption with stealing celebrities' naked photos and making them go public. And by the way, folks, let me share a little insight from my years in Hollywood. When a celebrity takes naked pictures of themselves and they put them up on their website, they want them to go public because it's a way to keep their star in the public eye. Okay? It's just another way of grabbing attention. It's one step above being in the tabloids at the supermarket checkout counters, but it's usually intentional when they put that stuff up there. And then they'll make a big thing, oh, how my privacy has been invaded. You put them up there. And the Gecko just got another fan email here. It's bizarre. So the DNC emails are revealing a lot of new information about what's been going on. There was definitely a pay-for-play operation, not just in the Clinton Foundation, but to the Democratic Party as a whole. And we're learning that people who are holding these top ambassadorships and appointed positions in places like the FCC aren't really qualified to be there. They were given these positions as a reward for raising huge amounts of money. Something else that came out of these DNC emails is back in 2015, Colin Powell was trading emails with a donor saying that Hillary's health is so bad she could hardly get up the podium. And remember that one of the photos that came out earlier this year showed Hillary Clinton standing up and making a speech and being literally held up by two people on either side of her. So that came on out. A lot of internal friction about how Hillary and Obama really can't stand each other came on out. But mostly, it's just another reminder of the incredible amounts of corruption going on in our political system, and it really is time for it to stop. And we're looking at more information yet to come from Julian Assange. And it's just like a slow drip, like the Chinese water torture. And Hillary's people are in a panic. They don't know how to control this stuff. That's why we had the interim head of the DNC out there saying, don't look at those files. There's malware. It'll infect your computer. It'll format your hard drive. It'll make your teeth fall out if you dare look at that stuff. And, of course, the usual fallback position, it's all Russian lies. The Russians did this. You don't want to be part and parcel to the Russians. And we know that Russia had nothing to do with it because, first of all, let's be honest. If Russia had gotten this information, they would not make it public. They would use it to blackmail and control people inside the U.S. government. And blackmail only works if the stuff is kept secret. Julian Assange has already said none of this came from Russia. He's implied but stopped short of saying that it was an internal leak by Seth Rich, who was assassinated shortly thereafter. Oliver Stone is saying his inside contacts are saying this was all an internal leak. There are people inside the Hillary campaign, they've had it. They're fed up. There's been a lot of turnover, a lot of people resigning. We had that story in WorldNet Daily where Clinton insiders who know her are starting to leak out that she's got Parkinson's stage 3. So Hillary's got a real problem, and it's a reminder that when you are a figurehead in a political campaign or a government, you don't abuse your people the way we know Hillary was abusing the White House staff from all these tell-all books from the Secret Service. And I would say that probably Hillary is finally beginning to understand the wisdom of the old saying that you need to be very, very careful who you step on your way to the top, because you are going to meet them again on your way back down to the bottom. Whether it's the Secret Service, your campaign staff, or the occasional visual effects expert whose career got wrecked 22 years ago. Claire's laughing again. And, there's a little bit of payback going on here, but I did another interview on our radio station today, and I pointed out that initially I got into this out of a sense of outrage and indignation. But my reasons have changed over the years, and I will share that with you when we come back from these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the last segment of our program today here, and I'm doing a lot of radio interviews these days besides my own show, and I'm always being asked how I got started in this, what keeps me going after 22 years. And when I first got blacklisted, yes, anger, outrage, a desire for payback, that was all part of the equation. But as I began to look more and more into what was really going on inside our country, I began to realize the issues went far beyond what had happened to Claire and I. To the very heart of what this nation was supposed to be and what it had actually become. Whether it was the fraud over TWA 800, the cover-up and the lies. And I began to realize that it's not a rare occurrence when government lies to the American people. It's business as usual. And that's what people really need to wake up and understand. The government doesn't lie to you on rare occasions. They lie to you about everything. Americans are the most lied to people on the face of the earth. And it's time for it to stop. Now, I will not live under a government that lies to me. I don't give my consent to a government that lies to me. And that consent would be meaningless anyway because it's a legal principle, that fraud negates consent. If we have the Declaration of Independence, that just governments rule with the consent of the governed, but the instant the government lies to you, that consent is negated. So this is a government that's operating by virtue of its constant lies without any legitimacy. And I like to say every once in a while that I will have a truthful government or I'll have no government at all. And the real issue there is what kind of a nation are we leaving to our children? Could any parent who's responsible and cares about their children really be willing to let them be sold into slavery to a government that lies to them about everything, to take their money, to take their freedoms, to send them off to be killed and crippled in wars? It really is time for it to stop. And I am very hopeful that we are going to succeed in getting Donald Trump into the White House so that we can begin to pry that iron-fisted grip of the narcocracy off the throat of our government and clean house, because it's long overdue. All of these people need to be held to account. The corporations have to be reined in. The money junkies have to be reined in. And we need a central government that remembers its first duty and obligation is to we the American people and the American nation. Not Wall Street, not Israel, not the military-industrial complex, but we the American people. That's why I agree with Donald Trump. It's time to make America great again. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. A reminder, you are all part of the independent media. Take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know, everywhere that you can. The issues are so important this election year. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.